Welcome, everyone. We're back. It's time for another episode of Crimes Against Folk.
Hello.
How y'all doing?
I'm pretty good.
Good. Me too. I'm all right. I'm all right. It's good to be back at it.
It is.
Yeah.
And I'm enjoying these book report episodes that we've started, and I hope you guys are enjoying them too. Please feel free to leave a comment on what you think with the interviews versus the book reports versus the topics we're discussing. We'd love to hear from you guys.
Yeah, please do. We wanna hear what you think, and let us know what you like, what you don't like, whatever it is that you desire to let us know. Please do. We love to hear from you.
Yeah, we do.
We want to thank our sponsor, EV, Electro Voice. They have provided us with these awesome RE20 black microphones that you are listening to our voices through.
Which we're obsessed with.
Yep, we love them. They're fantastic.
It's like one of those things where since it came into my life, I'm like, I don't know what I'd do without it.
Yeah.
But I didn't even know before because I didn't have it. But now that I have it, I can't imagine my life without it.
Yeah, they're fantastic microphones. You can find out more about them at electrovoice.com. We want to thank all of our patrons, but also specifically our producer patrons, Alice Williams. Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
If you want to find out more about our Patreon, go to patreon.com/crimesagainstfolk. There you'll find all kinds of cool bonus stuff. We've been doing it for a couple months now, so there's a pretty cool backlog of bonus stories and bonus videos. Like we've been breaking down some of our recordings and songs and stuff like that. So we've got a lot there for you to check out.
Yeah, we're really excited about this week's song breakdown, or this month's. We put a lot into that one. It's really fun too, going back through them, because we're like, oh yeah, we did this to that. What did we do to this? And we have to sometimes look it up because our brains aren't so good always.
Yeah. We've done quite a bit of stuff, so it all kind of mushes together at one point.
Yeah. It is. It does become mush.
Yeah.
Which is nothing wrong with mush. We all know that mushy peas are the best part of a fish and chips meal.
Oh, that's a good point.
It's deep.
That's a very good point.
I know not everyone would agree, and some people are like, what are mushy peas? That sounds horrible. They're not.
They're not. They're very good. Especially if you have them at Chez Fred.
Oh, yeah. Chez Fred. Oh, I can't wait to travel again, just so we can go back to Chez Fred.
Just so we can go to Chez Fred. Chez Fred is this awesome fish, and they have lots of stuff, but they're well known for their fish and chips. This is in Bournemouth,
England.
England.
Yep.
And boy, it's the best. It's the best that we've had. I'm sure those of you in the UK, your local chippy is probably the best, but this is the best that we've had. So give us your suggestions.
Oh yeah, we could do a whole episode on chippies. But we had our friend John came out to our show, and then after the show, he's like, "All right, what do you guys want to do? You want to go to the bar and have some drinks?" He's like, "I'm with the cool musicians. We're gonna go party." And we're like, "Yeah, let's go to Chez Fred." And he's like, "My grandma goes there." We're like, "So?"
She's cool. She gets it.
Mushy peas, man. Mushy peas.
Yep. I remember that. That was fun though. We still made it really fun.
We did. He was like, "I cannot believe I'm at Chez Fred right now with you guys. This is so weird."
Yeah.
Oh, that was fun.
That was really fun. But we thanks to everybody for supporting us. Thanks for hanging out with us. And today we have a really interesting topic that I know next to nothing about.
Yeah.
Ash did a ton of work putting this together. So today we're talking about Lilith Fair.
Which
And-
is like such a perfect topic for crimes against folk because, we try to share stories that kind of come out of left field,
Yeah.
stories where like they specifically tell you you cannot do this. And then musicians or something in the music industry goes, watch me. And does it, or something where you just wouldn't expect it to have turned out the way it does. That is a crime against folk. That is our podcast. So these are the stories we've been sharing, whether they're from us, from our guests, or from other artists that we just tell the stories of. And this is so perfect for the show, and I am so excited to bring it to you today.
Yeah, this is really super exciting. We'll have some show and tell near the end, and we'll do a little song, and you know the drill. You know the drill by now.
Yeah.
So what do you say? Do you want to get started?
Let's jump in.
Okay.
We're going to start with a clip.
Yay.
Tour. Critics said it could not be done. They said nobody would come to see an all-woman show.
I mean, for a long time, I only knew men in the music business.
But they proved everyone wrong.
I waited 20 years to see this happen.
It was called the Lilith Fair, and it swept the country off its feet.
I have something very different to bring to the party than my male counterpart.
They became the sirens of song in the summer of '97.
Part of it was just a really selfish desire to gather together a lot of the wonderful musicians out there.
Sheryl Crow, Jewel, Fiona Apple, Joan Osborne, the Indigo Girls. They all signed on to the tour that would become the hottest ticket of the summer of '97 and would land a place in music history. Tonight, the ultimate backstage pass, a compelling and intimate look at the women behind the music of Lilith Fair.
You dream it and then you do it. And that's what you did.
You dream it and then you do it. This is obviously not VH1. This is Crimes Against Folk, but luckily they put that on their YouTube page so we could play it for you. I also love just the aesthetic of that video because it's so 90s. And that's what we're talking about. We are talking about Lilith Fair, and this is the story of how an all-female fronted music festival blew everyone out of the water in the late 90s and massively helped fight for equality for women in a very male-dominated music industry. They said it couldn't be done, and then they did it, thanks to the efforts of a Canadian powerhouse named Sarah McLachlan.
Oh.
Yeah, and this is the story of Lilith Fair, and this is very personal to me. First of all, there were 4 Lilith Fair summers. I was at 2 of them. And also, they happen to be some of my biggest musical influences, as well as a lot of songwriters who kind of grew up learning guitar in the 90s. I mean, Sarah McLachlan, Indigo Girls, Jewel, Paula Cole, Fiona Apple, all of these just real powerhouse women that came out, all came together to do one festival. And it was a really, really, really big deal. So I'm going to tell you guys the story of this festival and how much it really did impact women. In fact, I didn't realize it. I realized that from a personal standpoint, but until I really got to dive in and dig into this festival, I didn't realize that it was beyond personal. It changed a whole industry and made women shine. So the sources that I have for you today come from NPR, Wikipedia, Billboard, Autostraddle, and Vanity Fair. So if you want to look at the original sources, you can go to our show notes to check them out and check out their full book reports as well. They're quite interesting, as well as some more clips. But how it started was from singer-songwriter Sarah McLachlan and friends. So Lilith Fair was one of the most successful touring festivals of the 90s. Founded by Sarah McLachlan, it featured a lineup of female solo artists and bands led by women. So back in 1996, Sarah McLachlan's career was blooming, but she became frustrated because radio stations wouldn't play 2 female artists in a row. Promoters also wouldn't book tours for more than 1 female artist on the bill. That whole idea lit a fire under our butts, McLachlan said. That stupid attitude became kind of a banner that we waved. And of course, she proved them wrong after a very successful tour with fellow artist Paula Cole. So McLachlan was pretty burned out. She had done a big tour for Fumbling Towards Ecstasy, which was a really big album of hers. But Terry McBride, who was her manager at the time, he really wanted her to go back on the road again. So he struck a deal with her. And she agreed to it. And he said, okay, you can only tour in the summer. And she said, okay, but I'm bringing another female artist on the bill. And that was the deal. And they both agreed. That's when she pulled in Paula Cole, because Paula Cole had just come out with some success with her first hit single, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? Well, this tour was a really big success. So Sarah was like, well, why stop here? And so she started putting on some more of these shows with more female artists, especially in her hometown of Vancouver, which kind of spread out into some other cities as well. There, Lisa Loeb and Michelle McAdory of Crash Vegas joined the bill. And then it just kind of grew. And it kept growing. So the festival happened really organically. They came up with a name for these smaller shows with the 4 to 5 women on the bill. And Sarah McLachlan decided to call it Lilith Fair. Lilith comes from Jewish lore because Lilith was the first woman who refused to be subservient to Adam. So according to McLachlan, she says, one of my closest friends, Buffy Childerhose, I'm sure I'm not going to say most of these last names correctly, so you'll have to forgive me, but she's a writer. Her friend's a writer. I was talking to her about the concept and names. She said, what about Lilith? And I said, who's Lilith? And then she schooled me. It was as simple as that. And the idea of a fair being a multifaceted festival, but also the word fair to me is about equality and inclusivity. Therefore, Lilith Fair. So the shows got bigger. And McLachlan said, well, why don't we make this a thing? And it became a thing. So she got together with McBride and some bookers and made this festival. So I have some direct quotes that I found on this really great article by Billboard, which again is in the show notes. And there's a lot of direct quotes from the artists themselves, Sarah McLachlan and Terry McBride. A lot of these will come from them, and it really lines out the story. So I'm going to give you guys some of those quotes right now. Starting with Terry McBride, CEO, co-founder of Network Music Group, and McLachlan's manager from 1988 to 2011. She really didn't want to headline, so we had to get other people. She put in for talent and said, they have to be female. That was another challenge. So with Marty booking the talent, we put a show together, and she had the time of her life playing with Paula, Lisa Loeb, and Suzanne Vega during a 1996 test shows in Burbank and Berkeley and a gig in Vancouver that was officially called Lilith and drew more than 10,000 people. We put that first show up and it did so well that we put a smaller version in LA, San Francisco. Then we got the branding and trademark going and officially launched in 1997, which would have been the first official festival. Sarah McLachlan says, I was having writer's block and I was home. When I stay home too long, I get restless. I like the idea of a few shows, but I didn't want to do a whole tour. Terry was like, why don't you do a few shows with artists you've played with before, like Paula Cole, and ask a few other women as well. That sounded like fun and really natural because I didn't want to have a whole show on my shoulders. And the artists we asked said yes, and the promoters we worked with said it sounded fun. I had played theaters, and all of a sudden I was in front of 16,000 people, and I thought, this is kind of amazing. I could maybe do more of these. At the end of the 4 shows, we said, let's do this next summer. Marty Diamond is McLachlan's former agent at Little Big Man and helped put together the lineup of these festivals. He said those test shows proved it would work, but there were a lot of naysayers. No one will spend money to see a bunch of women play, is what we would hear. There certainly had been smaller events that existed that were women-centric, but this was a different idea. McBride said it came off so authentically, we thought, we have to do this next summer. It wasn't a reaction of anything else. A lot of promoters really didn't like the idea of 2 female artists playing together, and I'd tell Sarah that, and she'd say, why? And all we could say is, we don't know. We don't get it personally. We think it's a great bill. But in the business then, it was 90% run on the live side by men, and radio was 90% run by men. McLachlan said it was a natural progression. Then we went out next year, and promoters that didn't know what we'd done said, you can't put 2 women on a bill, but that stupid attitude became our banner. That was a time Soundgarden and Pearl Jam dominating the radio waves and festivals. And you wouldn't think twice about hearing 2 of those bands in a row. But if they added Tori Amos that week, they'd say, we can't add you too, but you're in the running. That seemed like such a ridiculous attitude. So, because women were being clumped together like that, we created a festival with all women clumped together. It was a grand FU. Then Dan Frazier, who's a network management president and co-founder of Network Music Group, from the promoter side, there were tours like Lollapalooza and Horde, I guess. And 96, there was Ozfest. We would come in and follow Ozfest around in 97. I don't know if you guys remember those big festivals, but they were...
I remember Ozfest, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they were pretty like known to be kind of crazy, right?
Like Warped Tour and stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah, like a real party. So he said that we would come in and follow Ozfest around, and they'd rip up the lawn, and there would be a mud pit, and people were like, thank God you came along. It was very different then. There was a lot of angst in festivals back then. So this is a quote from Tracy Bonham, who played 1997 and 1998 Lilith Fair. My first album, The Burdens of Being Upright, came out in 1996, and I was touring around as a rock act trying to distance myself from the singer-songwriter thing, because in the 1990s, that was not cool. I was out on the road, and my manager said, I guess Sarah McLachlan is putting together this thing with all girls. And I remember going, oh no, I'm not doing that. I was already fielding so many questions from the press about what does it feel like to be a woman in rock. But the cool part was Sarah personally called me, so that was kind of great. At first, I wondered how my music would fit in, but what Sarah taught me is it didn't matter. We were joining forces, and it was cool that we'd all complete different backgrounds and sounds. I was on the same bill as Missy Elliott, Bonnie Raitt, and the Cardigans. What I learned from her is let's celebrate everyone. So celebrate all women is what they did. This was, it was about bringing as many different women together as possible for this show. This sounds like an absolute nightmare. I was a teenager around this time, and I was kind of just becoming a singer-songwriter myself, so I wasn't trying to get on the radio. But can you imagine hearing that from promoters? No, we can't play you because we've already played Tori Amos this week. That would be so maddening.
I mean, haven't you kind of heard that before? I mean, in your own personal career, I feel like that was something we talked about.
Yes.
Once.
Yes, especially in Nashville, actually.
Yeah.
In fact, that's funny, Ed, because I remember being on many co-writes in Nashville, and my co-writers would not write songs for women because there was no market for them in country music.
Good grief.
So I guess I do understand. From what I can tell, that's changed. I mean, when I was in Nashville from 2010 to 2014-ish, and the top 10 radio, country radio, I mean, you'd maybe hear Taylor Swift and Miranda Lambert, but 9 out of the 10 artists were always male. Mm-hmm. And they were not pushing women musicians. And the reason that I would hear from the producers and managers and whatnot would say, well, there's just not a market for it, though. People don't really want to hear women in country music.
Jeez.
Which sounds a lot like what Sarah McLachlan and these other women had to deal with. Mm-hmm. So I have, just a side note, that I have, stick around for later in this book report, because it's funny, I keep calling it a book report, but that is what it felt like when I was doing the research on this. So I actually have some direct quotes of what it was like to be a woman in the industry in the 90s. So I will get to that later. But let's get back to the history of this tour. So there were 3 stages at Lilith Fair. One was the main stage, one was the side stage, and they had an even smaller stage in the middle of the lawn set up for local artists. So they would hold competitions in cities for local talent to perform. So these artists went from playing, a bar the night before for a couple hundred people to playing Lilith Fair for thousands. What an experience that must have been. And because Sarah had all this deep history as specifically a woman artist in the industry, and also being the opening act, she really wanted to make this experience equal for everyone. So she gave everybody the same backstage royalty, from the crew to the local talent to the main acts, everybody.
So wait, so Sarah, she opened the show?
No, but she's been an opener on other shows, and she just knows kind of how not so great that can be.
Got it.
And she wanted all the openers and all the local acts. She wanted everyone to feel like they had a part of this festival, like they were all equal. She didn't want anyone to like come on and play their set and leave. She wanted all the artists to stick around and get to know each other and talk to each other and play on each other's sets. And I mean, she would even she said she knocked on Bonnie Raitt's door backstage, was like, hey, you need a background singer? And she went, and Sarah McLachlan sang backup for Bonnie Raitt.
Awesome.
Stuff like that was happening a lot. She was just trying to glue everybody together as much as possible. Lilith, it got a lot of negative press from people. One of the famous things that they would call it is Lesbapalooza.
Oh, good grief.
Yeah. Which is awesome. And also White Chicks Fest. But the festival was meant to be for everyone. And according to Sarah, and you can kind of look at this. One thing I'll get to later is I'm going to go through the lists of artists that played the main stages throughout the years, and you will see a progression. It is a lot of white females at the beginning, but that starts to change. And Sarah really struggled with this, because she claims she asked a lot of Black artists and they just didn't really want a part of it at the beginning because they were a little bit skeptical. So she asked artists who were in her genre a lot at first. So the genre starts to get more well-rounded as the festival goes on, because other female artists were like, oh, we do want a part of this. But I mean, her circle of, singer-songwriter folk musicians were a lot of white chicks. Yeah. So she said, we asked a lot of artists based on who I am. And, but based on the success of the first year, they looked at it and said, oh, this might be interesting for my artist. I knew after the first couple of shows that it was going to work. The second year, it was much easier to get artists from different genres, because that first summer was such an eye-opening experience. So again, we'll get to those lineups a little bit later, and you'll see how the genres start to change a little bit. They also handed a local charity a check at a press conference at the end of every show, which was often somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, apparently these charities would get choked up. They had no idea they were getting this much money, but they knew she would pick a local charity for each city on the tour. And at the end, she would have these press conferences, and she hated going to the press conferences, but she loved seeing she was so exhausted after every show. She knew that was the last thing she probably wanted to do, but handing this check over and watching the tears of these communities was just huge. She says, the only reason I could stomach the press conferences is we would sometimes give $33,000 check to Minneapolis to a women's shelter, and to know we're not only putting on a show, but also leaving behind a bit of a legacy. The good energy was being carried forward. For me, that was a big part of it, like being an ambassador for kindness. It solidified how good it feels to live your purpose, to know you're doing something meaningful and leaving a lasting mark. And also, it really helped her. Sarah McLachlan has a foundation for after-school programs for at-risk populations in Vancouver. So that the Sarah McLachlan School of Music, I think some of the money helped her get that going as well. And all kinds of wonderful, eye-opening experiences were happening. McBride said, "I'd never heard of a burqa, and 20 years ago, we had a lady who came on tour with a mannequin dressed in a burqa, educating people about how women were treated in different parts of the world. There were so many eye-opening moments like that. It was a great place to have a respectful conversation about life and issues without all the anger."
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, there was so much that went on. They even had, and I didn't find this in any of the stories I looked up or any of the quotes or anything, but I know this happened because I was there and I bought one. Was a compilation CD. And the cool thing about this compilation CD is it included Sarah McLachlan and then like No Name X from, somewhere Iowa. Yeah. And so you could discover all this. So imagine being like a nobody singer-songwriter and then ending up on a compilation CD with Sarah McLachlan and the Indigo Girls that they sell at Lilith Fair. And they sold them at every show. In fact, if you guys look at the show, the Instagram photo I shared on our page and also Facebook, that's actually the compilation CD cover. And again, I know this because I bought it. I was there and I bought it and I loved it. And as a teen growing up, it was super, super inspiring to like have this. And I think I even like learned a couple of the artist's songs and played them at some open mics at the time. I was probably 16.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So yeah, it was really inclusive and just fun, to just try to have fun. Sarah McLachlan says, "I remember having a great conversation with the Pretenders' Chrissy Hind. When she first came on board, Sheryl Crow was there, and Hind said, I don't know about this thing. I think I laughed at her and said, F you, I'm glad you're here." And she was like, okay, that's how it's going to be. She might have called us precious bitches. And I said, "You're going to have fun, sweetheart." And one night she was playing Middle of the Road and Sarah came out and did like a silly dance. It was her last night and she wore a pink tube top and flashed her and then realized she had flashed the whole band. And Chrissy Hine was laughing so hard she just like fell down on stage in front of 16,000 people. That kind of camaraderie was really important to McLachlan. And then Fraser says, "One of my favorite moments was a show when it was pouring rain like a monsoon, and Sheryl Crow came out with a snorkel, mask, and fins and thanked the crowd for sticking in there."
Where did she get a snorkel and a mask and fins?
I was totally thinking that too. Like I had this vision in my head where she goes to her manager and she's like, "I need a snorkel and a mask and fins and I'm going to need it in 15 minutes. And he was like, "Okay."
Right. That's great.
Yeah. I mean, you can't just like call up Amazon and get it delivered.
Yeah, not then.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe she just had it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. That's great.
Just something she tours with. And then almost every night there was, this is from Diamond. He says, almost every night there was a group encore, which was usually Sarah or the Indigo Girls poking the stick to get it going. It was always a big deal and a lot of discussion about what song it would be and who would kick it off. But it always felt like a discussion. Everyone felt like a peer, whether they were on the third stage or the main stage. McLachlan said it was really fun and one of those magic moments where sometimes it was great and sometimes we fell on our asses. My favorite ones were where every artist was on stage and everyone wanted to participate. It was great to see people stick around all day to the end to be a part of it, because sometimes you just want to play your 45 minutes and disappear. And I have a little clip for you guys, and I really resonated with this too, because Ed and I have done a few shows, and I'm sometimes put on my promoter hat and organize shows, and we usually do a big sing along at the end, and I felt exactly that way. Like, yes, sometimes we fall on our asses, and sometimes it's a lot of fun, but it's nice to just keep everybody around and keep everybody feeling like they're part of it, and back on the stage. So this clip I found is from the 2010 tour, actually, which was the very last show tour, and it's a song they all do together, and you can see how many people come on the stage to do this, including Hart and Sarah and Miranda. I think Miranda Lambert's there, but you'll recognize a lot of the artists, and the song is Because the Night is the song.
Opportunity to invite everybody out who participated today. Come on, ladies. Come on out and help me sing one more song. Take me now, baby, here as I am. Hold me close, try to understand. Desire is a hunger, is the fire I breathe. Love is a banquet on which we feed. Trying to understand the way I feel when I'm in your hands. Take me tonight, come undercover. Can't hurt you now, can't hurt you now, can't hurt you now.
Cool.
Yeah. Pretty fun, huh?
That looked really fun.
What a show. I mean, all those amazing artists on one bill is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially them all being on the stage at the same time. That's kind of neat.
Yeah. Yeah. Even though, like Sarah said it herself earlier, it's kind of a train wreck. And like Ed and I were discussing as they were playing that he said that he was like tensing up as an audio engineer. The audio engineer side of him was like, and yeah, I mean, there's no good way to mix that kind of a thing. And it's never going to be perfect, but that's what I love about it. I love how, Sarah drops the mic and like, they're all dancing terribly and they don't care. Like, it's part of the fun and the camaraderie. You can just really see it in that clip.
Yeah.
So what are we learning so far? We're learning that Lilith Fair was massive in the fight for equality for women in the music industry. It was huge. And again, I didn't realize how much of an impact it had for women, and I think really paved the way for a lot of people. So McBride has a cool quote here. He said, "We had so much to prove to the overall business that first year." And you have to remember, back then, there wasn't a radio format when we started that supported female music. By the second year, there were 30 to 40 hot AC stations across major cities playing predominantly female artists. That was a huge deal. The lasting legacy is that the hot AC format was created because of Lilith. And I mean, what else would it have been?
Wow.
That's incredible.
In the space of a year?
1 year.
That's crazy.
Yes, it's insane. So it was, I mean, really, like, I feel really, I get choked up doing this because as a female artist, I feel so grateful that this came. I mean, I'm not really dealing with that kind of level of industry like Sarah McLachlan and Jewel had to deal with, but who knows what I would have to be dealing with that I'm not already dealing with if it hadn't come into existence, In 1997, Lilith Fair earned $16 million gross, making it the top grossing of any touring festival that year. And among all concert tours for that year, it was the 16th highest grossing. McLachlan followed the success with two more in 1998 and 1999. I was at 1998 and at 1999. I was not at 1997, unfortunately.
Cool.
It was very cool. My mom and I were talking about it this morning as we were having breakfast, and because she went with me, and
I was going to ask if she went with you. Yeah.
She did, and we had the best time. We were up and we were dancing. There was some. She reminded me there was a man, an older man there, and he had taken his daughters and all of her friends. It was his daughter and like 10 of her friends, and then me and my mom, and we didn't know each other, but we were all just dancing together, and we had the best time. And that definitely had a big impact on me as a singer-songwriter and as an aspiring musician as well.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it really was. And I remember the stage and the lawn, because we had seats that were there were two parts of the place we saw it at. There were like the seated area, and then there was the lawn, and we were in the way back of the seated area, which was kind of cool because the side stage was kind of more like towards the food court. They had put like a big stage right there, like a mobile stage. And so we had to walk over there if we wanted to see shows there, which we did. Mm-hmm. But then we had a good view, even though we were far back, of the main stage. But what was cool is we could just kind of turn around and look at the lawn stage as well. So we got a little bit of best of both worlds kind of a thing.
Nice.
So yeah, so the origins of this festival included backing from, and you've heard quotes from them already, Dan Frazier, Marty Diamond, and Terry McBride, and, mainly Sarah McLachlan. But I want to talk about Sarah McLachlan just a little bit more. According to Vanity Fair in 1996, singer-songwriter Sarah McLachlan was tipping from an alternative icon into something more like a traditional pop success. At 26, she garnered serious momentum and 2.8 million albums sold in the United States. So she was constantly breaking barriers, and as often as she'd hear no, she would seek to prove them wrong. The 90s was a huge time for women in music, you guys. And really, we have Sarah and the artists of Lilith Fair to thank for a majority of that, because luckily, she had hit a lot of solo success at that point on her own. And I've probably seen Sarah McLachlan 7 or 8 times in concert. I just couldn't love her music anymore. And she tells interesting stories. I mean, she said, I think she got her first record deal when she was 18, and she's really had a blessed career, and she's done so many wonderful things with it.
Yeah, that's funny, because when I think of the 90s, I think about like women and women fronted groups. Like that's one of the, I don't associate that really with any other decade except the 90s.
Yeah, it was a really inspiring time to be a female singer-songwriter and guitar player.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, a lot of my friends who are within a 5 to 7 year range of my age, that we all have this, we're all covering the same songs, and we have very similar musical influences. And when people ask us who we love, it's always like Sarah McLachlan, Jewel, the Indigo Girls, because that's that's how we grew up, and that's what inspired us. And it was super inspiring. You're hearing the story now.
Yeah.
So I want to get into the history of the tours a little bit, as in who played. Like I said, there were 3 original Lilith Fair tours, 97, 98, 99. There was one in 2010, which I'll get to in a moment. But let's talk about the main stage artists on 1997. Headliners included Sarah McLachlan, Sheryl Crow, Tracy Chapman, Jewel, Paula Cole, Suzanne Vega, Mary Chapin Carpenter, Fiona Apple, Joan Osborne, The Cardigans, Emmylou Harris, Lisa Loeb, Indigo Girls, Sean Colvin, Meredith Brooks, Tracy Bonham, India Ari, and Natalie Merchant.
Good grief.
Wow.
That's like everybody.
Yeah. I mean, they all weren't on one show. I think they rotated out.
Yeah.
Sarah McLachlan and Suzanne Vega did play all dates. The rest kind of rotated out a little bit. Yeah, that is like everybody.
Wow.
It is. And and then even on the side stages, I mean, there were some names that I recognized on the side stages in the lawn. So I don't know if they had success at that time or if the success came after, but Patty Griffin, Wild Strawberries, Dido,
Oh, yeah.
Beth Orton.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then the village stage, that's the one that was on the lawn. That's the one that would have the local contests. And if you won the contest, you got to play. I met somebody who won and got to play it at once. And I've been trying to rack my brain to think about who it is. And I cannot think about it. Think of it. It's driving me crazy. So there were 37 shows between the USA and Canada between July and August for that first tour. And then in 1998, it got even bigger. Nina Cherry and Lauryn Hill were on the 1998 bill, but they had to drop out for whatever reason, which was undisclosed. But again, the main stage artist in 98, this is an even bigger list, and I'm going to mess up some of these last names, so I apologize, because I have not heard of some of these artists. But Sarah McLachlan, Angie Delight, Bonnie Raitt, Chantel Kreviazuk, Cowboy Junk, that's one I might have screwed up.
Sounds right.
Okay. Cowboy Junkies, Desiree, Diana Krall, Emmylou Harris, Erykah Badu, Indigo Girls, Joan Osborne, Lisa Loeb, Liz Fair, Luscious Jackson, Mary Chapin Carpenter, Meredith Brooks, Meshel Negocello. Nedegacello.
I think that's what it is, yeah. Wow.
Missy Elliott, Natalie Merchant, Paula Cole, Queen Latifah, Sean Colvin, Sheryl Crow, Sinead O'Connor, Suzanne Vega, Tracy Bonham.
Jeez.
Yeah. So, I mean, it makes sense. 97 was such a huge success that everyone wanted to get on board in 98. And I mentioned earlier that you can start to see more artists of color coming on board, and that's definitely apparent in this lineup. Smaller stages. So there were over 60 artists on the smaller stages, including Lucinda Williams, Sixpence None the Richer, and then the local talent searches again. So there were 57 shows So we went from 40 shows to 57 shows from June 19th to August 31st. It's getting bigger. And if you look at that tour lineup, I mean, they maybe have one day off a week and they're playing every night. It's absolutely crazy.
Oh boy.
Plus press conferences. I mean, that must have been very exhausting.
Yeah.
So then the third festival in 1999, it looks like they took out the local talent searches at that point. But they had even more artists. The main stage on 99 included Sandra Bernhard, Sean Colvin, Deborah Cox, Sheryl Crow, Dixie Chicks, Indigo Girls, Queen Latifah, Lisa Loeb, Luscious Jackson, Martina McBride,
Cool.
Sarah McLachlan, Monica, Maya. One should get once again with Nichelle Nadegocello. Did I say it right that time?
I think so.
Nadegocello?
I'm not sure I'm saying it right, but that's
Okay.
close.
Well, you guys can correct us. Liz Fair, The Pretenders, Jonelle Romero, Disappear Fear, and Suzanne Vega.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's kind of, you can also kind of see here how, I mean, this is 99 now. We're starting to phase out of the singer-songwriter popularity into more mainstream pop. Mm-hmm. So, and then on the second and Village stages, and again, I don't know which came first, their Success or this tour, but you'll recognize some of these names. Lori McKenna, Christina Aguilera, Nelly Furtado, Tegan and Sarah, and The Innocence Mission.
Wow. They were on the second stage?
Yeah, I know. In the 90s, it's confused. But the second stage wasn't small. It wasn't like a small... I mean, obviously the main stage was the main stage, but I remember that second stage also being kind of a big deal. They didn't really... And it's not like two things were happening at the same time. They were playing this while they were doing the set changes on the main stage is when the second stage would happen.
Wow.
And then I'm not sure how they worked in the smaller Village stage, but they had it sorted out somehow. And Ed and I played, remember when we played Americana Festival in San Diego? It was like at that, I think it was in Poway at some like pioneer town.
Oh, right. At the train thing?
Yeah, it wasn't the train festival. That was a different one. We played the San Diego Americana
but
Fest.
It was in a park. Like
It
kind of
was.
park. I do remember that. Okay.
Yeah, and it was cool how that was done because they had 3 stages and they had this thing like clockwork. Like you finish your set and then the artists on the next stage are boom starting theirs and they're switching the other stage over while the other artists are playing. And if you do a festival like that, it can work out really, really well. I mean, it was organized so well.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there were 4, only back down to 40 shows at that time. Then they stopped for 10 years. And Sarah McLachlan says the vibe on stage translated. Everyone understood what it was, and they felt like they were part of something special. We were the highest grossing tour of that summer, but I was the loudest proponent of putting the brakes on after the 1999 edition. Everyone else would have loved a 4th or 5th summer, but I saw the fatigue in all of us. It was time to quit on top. I totally get that. I mean, just that must have been exhausting.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
And it feels like, I mean, I could be wrong about this, but just judging by how that third tour looks and the lineup, it feels like it was losing a little bit of steam. So she probably just wanted to just stop and say, well, we've made our point. We've accomplished our mission. Let's like take what all this precious work we've done and put it into use in our real lives and maybe like integrate more with more festivals, maybe get more festivals with women. Like you don't need an all women's festival anymore if you've accomplished your equality.
Yeah.
But that's just my personal take on that. And it sounds, I don't know. I think it's still kind of cool, but they did reboot. They did. And it was a colossal failure. Yeah, which is too bad. So in 2010, I remember being very excited about this. They tried it again. So according to Wikipedia, the tour was plagued with financial problems from the beginning. The first 7 shows were sparsely attended, and the 8th show was the first to be canceled. Initially, Sarah McLachlan claimed that the July 8th Phoenix show was canceled in protest of Arizona Senate Bill 1070, which she strongly opposed. I remember that. I was there. I remember her announcing this, and I remember that bill. This podcast is not about that bill, but it was very controversial at the time. She did not support it, and so she didn't want to come to Phoenix. I remember that. It was very disappointing, but that was her stance, and maybe there were other reasons too. Sounds like things weren't going so well anyway, you know. There were a lot of artists that they had booked that dropped out of the tour, including headliners Carly Simon, Norah Jones, Kelly Clarkson, the Go-Go's, and Queen Latifah, for fear that they would not be paid for their performances. And about 1/3 of the tour was canceled due to poor ticket sales. So the main stage artists included Ann McNamee, or Ann Atomic, Anya Marina, The Bangles, Beth Orton, Brandi Carlile, Cat Power, Chantal Kreviazuk. I still can't do that one. I'll come back to it. Colby Kelly, Courtyard Hounds, which is actually that Dixie Chicks side project without Natalie, the singer. Emmylou Harris, Erykah Badu, A Fine Frenzy, Gossip, Heart, Indigo Girls, Ingrid Michaelson, Janelle Monáe, Jenny Riviera, Lights, Mary J. Blige, Metric, I love Metric, Miranda Lambert, Missy Higgins, Rosie Thomas, Sarah Bareilles, Sarah McLachlan, Serena Ryder, Sheryl Crow, Sugarland, Suzanne Vega, and Tegan and Sarah.
Wow. That's a pretty heavy lineup anyway.
It really is. So it's kind of surprising because I feel like all of these artists can really hold their own.
Yeah.
With or without the festival. But the problem is, there were multiple problems. One of them hypothesizes that ticket prices were too high. So that could have been it. I mean, and that's a lot of people to pay as well. I mean, I know they weren't all in one show, but still, that's a lot of people to pay. And you have to have the funding for that, right? And with 10 years off, I can imagine maybe it didn't pick enough steam. I don't know. There's a few hypotheses here.
I get that because 2010 would have been the year right after the housing market crashed.
They talk about that too. Like people didn't have as much money to spend.
Yeah, it's possible that had some kind of effect on it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there were less side stages and everything too. So, and then a couple of the dates moved to smaller venues, which I believe from the clip we played earlier, I believe that was a smaller venue. It looked like it to me. So McLachlan, according to NPR, McLachlan, she claims she wasn't as concerned about ticket sales as she was about building the community. Argued a few. She said, she's made a few poignant statements about this. One, she argued that there's too much negativity in the press. Others might argue that women were already too relevant in the scene, so it wasn't as big of a deal. Like, the radio stations were playing plenty of women artists at this point, thanks to the efforts of Lilith Fair. And there were plenty of tours with all women on the bills. Thanks for terms. Now, all that said, I actually, just side note, I think that there is a really long way to go for equality of women in the music industry. And I think a lot of it happens behind the scenes. Yeah. And like sidemen, producers, engineers. And you hear things like, well, there just aren't enough women, though, or there's no odd. Like, no. Why aren't there enough women? Also, why? That doesn't make any sense to me. So, side rant over. McLachlan says you can second guess yourself on any number of things. We had really strong, diverse lineups last time, and people had more money to spend. I don't know why nobody has tried it again. Music shifted then in 1999 when we had finished, and boy bands were becoming huge as the pendulum swung back towards male artists. People kept saying, you need to bring it back. And we tried in 2010, but it was a colossal failure because the intentions were not as pure. I am not who I was back then. If it were to succeed today, it would have to be somebody new to carry the torch, a new artist. It doesn't have to be called Lilith. It can be called something else. with someone else. With the Women's March and Trump in power and everyone banging on my door, we need to bring this back. No, we don't. But someone of this moment should create something different because this time is very different.
That makes sense.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And she says, I've read some, I'm not sure if I have it in here or not, but she said at one point, she's like, for me, it's not about the ticket sales. And I get that. It's probably not. Sarah McLachlan doesn't need the money. She's okay. Yeah. She wants her festivals to be a success, but this is about a community and celebrating women in music. Mm-hmm. So to her, it probably didn't matter. What were there 5,000 people versus 15,000 people? That's still 5,000 people. That's still a really big deal. Mm-hmm. So she probably saw it very differently, but her, the people, the promoters who need to make the money probably felt there very differently. So this is the autostraddle.com quote that I found that I thought was interesting. And they said, maybe it's a high ticket prices, maybe it's a lineup of artists, or maybe it's hard to create the pure artistry that happened from 1997 to 1999 when we're now living in a Kesha world. We are in the midst of one of the most challenging summer concert seasons, with many tours being canceled outright, says Lilith co-founder Terry McBride, which is a very good point. Like we said, it was right after the housing crash. So was Lilith the problem, or were people just not really going out and spending money? Because it sounds like a lot of tours were having issues. Everyone involved with the tour would like to apologize to the fans and artists scheduled to play in these markets and express appreciation for all the support for the festival's return. Lilith remains the only tour of its kind, and we are confident that fans will be amazed by what each date has to offer. Regardless, Sarah McLachlan doesn't seem to have a desire for another Lilith Fair. And it begs a couple of questions. Why hasn't this been done again by somebody else or a little bit differently? I wonder.
That is a good question. You could argue it partially did its job back in the 90s, but at the same time, like you said earlier, things kind of regressed behind the scenes. I think where things are there's still stuff to deal with behind the scenes. So, I think it sounds to me like Sarah McLachlan kind of had the right idea. Like somebody of this time period of this generation would need to do something, need to have a similar thing, but for this generation, because the 90s were a very different time.
They were, you can't recreate the exact same thing. It would have to look different somehow. Yeah. Maybe it isn't the Women's March. Maybe that's how it looks different. They have performers and people come out.
Yeah, that's true.
Possible.
That's possible.
But it would be nice to see something else organized. But I want to bring this home because with some quotes, because again, the most moving thing that I got out of my research on Lilith Fair was just how bad it was for women in the 90s to make any kind of traction. It's even amazing that we have such incredible talent like we do. And it's even more amazing that, like Ed said, what you remember out of the 90s is this group of female singer-songwriters, because they had to break so many barriers to get there. And just to prove that point, I'm going to leave you with some quotes from some of these artists themselves about what it was like. Amy Mann, promoters were like, nobody will come to see two women. Liz Fair, they'd pit us against each other. If you got the slot, then I didn't. Jewel, you can't play two women back to back on the radio. Lisa Loeb, we're already playing Sheryl Crow, so we can't play you. Sheryl Crow, I remember talking to my agent about touring with another female, and the response was, you don't want to do that because it won't sell tickets. Amy Ray of Indigo Girls, there are only so many gay women they were going to play, which was usually going to be Melissa Etheridge. Which that's a whole nother battle, right?
Yeah.
You can't have two women in the music industry, especially can't have two lesbians.
Jeez.
It's crazy. Man, when I signed a deal with Modern Records in 92, the other label I'd been talking to was A&M. They really liked the record, but then they kind of hemmed and hawed and finally said, well, we can't sign you because we already have a female artist. That was Sheryl Crow. That was it. One slot. Liz Fair, male artists, male producers, male roadies, everything was male. Everything. This is Andrea Warner, author of We Oughta Know, How Four Women Ruled the 90s and Changed the Canadian Music. The irony was the mid-90s was the first time that women outbought men in terms of music consumption. This idea that men didn't listen to these artists was bullshit.
Yeah.
Frasier, it got even harder for the girls to get fair market ticket price to get to the level the boys were playing at. McLachlan, people were saying, you can't do that. Well, we did, and people came. So this kind of, just to spin it back towards the success. McBride, we had spent 8 years building a Sarah Live career that wasn't really dependent on anything. We knew which marketplaces would sell tickets, whether it was 5,000 or 10,000 or 15,000. Sheryl Crow was in a very similar situation. You had all these artists that were bubbling up. Some could do some marketplaces and some could do others, but none of them could do all. But in combination, they could. McLachlan, I realized early there's strength in numbers. Banding together allowed all of us to expand our fan bases, to play in front of way more people than we could have by ourselves. Diamond, once we knew the beta test worked, we all kind of sat there and patted each other's back saying, we have a proof of concept. Frasier, it's not like one aha moment. We were all just went, okay, Lilith. It was a year and a half of struggling and then saying, F it, let's just do this. So I'm going to leave you with a live performance between three of my all-time favorite artists. Sarah McLachlan, well, four really, because there are two Indigo Girls, and Jewel. In fact, you will often hear me list all three of these artists as my top three musical inspirations. So it's just a personal touch of how special this performance is. I caught this performance from these three artists, and I was absolutely blown away by how amazing these singers truly are, because they blend and they listen, which is also probably why Lilith Fair was such a success, because these artists came together and they blended and they listened. So just keep in mind that one of the things I was really impressed with was the harmonies on this performance. They all take turns highlighting their voices in this song, which is an Indigo Girls song. And then they all come together in 4-part harmony. And I had to really listen to hear who's singing the low harmony, and it's Jewel. And you can barely tell who is singing what. This is how blended they are. I absolutely love this performance. I'm happy to leave you guys with this. So thank you for listening to my spiel on Lilith Fair, and enjoy this last clip.
The water is wide, I can't cross on, and neither I have wings to fly. Give me a boat, carry two, both shall roll. Love and I. Love is gentle, love is kind, the sweetest fly. When first it's new, but love grows old and waxes cold. do. Is a ship that sailed the sea. She's loaded deep can be, but not as deep as the love I know not how I sink or swim. The water is wide, I can't cross over, and neither I have wings to fly. Give me a boat that can carry two, and both shall row, my love and I, and both shall row, my love and I.
Wow.
Aren't you glad I found that clip?
Yes, I am very glad you found that clip. Holy smokes.
Yeah. It's like, doesn't get any more perfect than that.
Yeah, that, wow. So you said I'd asked, I guess I'd mentioned it didn't sound like I would have, this sounds like a traditional song. Mm-hmm. And you said it was of Scottish origin?
I think so. Just on a quick Google search, it looks like it's a Scottish traditional folk song from the 1600s, but
Neat.
I don't know if it's the same one. It's
Right,
called
they might
Waters
have
Wide.
taken it and done something with it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, so there you go. We have Lilith Fair to thank for a lot of the quality we've accomplished for women in the music industry, even though we do have a long way to go. But it's nice to bring that memory back to life and celebrate all the people involved, including the men that help make it happen.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. And you mentioned before the from the quotes, a lot of those quotes were really interesting because to me, my what I've seen is that the same thing happens like in the video game industry.
Oh,
Like even just recently, like 2 days ago, they announced that the next protagonist, the main character of the Grand Theft Auto series, is going to be a female. That's the first time they've done it in the game's history. and and all of the women in the gaming industry were reposting like the Twitter replies to it, and it's all these neckbeards who are just like, only guys play GTA, no one's gonna buy it. And I'm like, really? Like, we're still here?
And what are you setting up? Like, that's the funny thing is like, but you're setting it up that way by saying that.
Exactly. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
And they're wrong, by the way. These are the capital G gamers. They're wrong, for the record. That's what it reminded me of when I was seeing all those quotes. I'm like, I mean, we're still there in a lot of different areas of the entertainment industry. We're still there, and hopefully it takes we need more kind of seismic events like Lilith Fair to kind of push just a little bit over the next little hill, to the next hill. But at least that other hill's done, So that's what we need.
It was a big hill. It was a big hill. And one of the coolest things about it, though, is it actually wasn't that hard to climb. It's just that nobody was doing it.
That's true.
Because they said you can't. And everyone said, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And Sarah McLachlan said, well, yes, we can. And then there was an audience for it. And they were starving for it. They were like, thank God, we want to hear some women sing. Yep. All these women had already been out. I mean, think about how hungry and how thirsty everybody was, because it's not like we didn't know who Jewel and Sarah McLachlan were.
Yeah.
And in the Indigo world, we loved this music. They just weren't playing it.
Exactly. They weren't playing it.
They were sometimes, and they were pinning them all against each other. You still feel that sometimes, and it's a constant. It's things like Folk Alliance and shows like this one, and it's all that the musician camaraderie just in general is really, really important to exactly what Sarah McLachlan said. You share fans. There's no human on this earth that's only a fan of one person. If you're like music, you're gonna like a lot of different music, and there's room for more. So it's nice to share that and to celebrate each other.
Yeah. Well, excellent job on this, Ashley. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
Super informative. Really, really, really entertaining. I loved it.
I knew you were gonna like this one, Ed, as a feminist.
Well, I don't know. I do my best, but I'd heard of Lilith Fair all the time. I just had no idea what the deal was. As you know, my musical tastes are always 2 decades behind. So
you missed the 90s.
Yeah. So I wouldn't have caught on to this kind of thing, but it's really cool to hear about it and how important it was to people in the music industry. That was really cool.
Yeah, again, that was the most interesting thing for me is like I didn't realize how pivotal it was for the music industry. So it just really, I was like, I knew I wanted to do, when we discussed doing like these book report episodes, I knew instantly I wanted to do one in Lilith Fair, but I didn't realize exactly the impact that it had until I started doing some research, and it was like, whoa, they wouldn't even play 2 female artists on the radio? That's crazy. So yeah, that felt really good. And
awesome.
Thank you very much. Hopefully you guys, we're going to stick around. We've got our next segment coming up here. Ed's got a show and tell photo that I was really excited to see that we're going to play right after a little Witherword video.
Woohoo. So yeah, this video, I think we talked about it somewhere, and we were like, oh, we talked about this experience, and then we're like, we know there's a video out there somewhere of this experience, and Ash found it, and it's just very exciting. So this was on our 2019 European tour, and we played the first, I believe, of 2 Woodstock 50th anniversary festivals that year.
Not unrelated.
We just were, I guess we were the token American band. And this one was in Wilhelmskirchen in Germany at Haus Eifgen, and we had played there the year prior. and wonderful, wonderful place. We met some really awesome people there, and they asked us back for this festival.
Yeah.
And so this is our performance with incredible rock group from the Netherlands, Van der Linde. I hope you enjoy it.
And Nixon's coming. We're finally on our own. This summer I hear the drum forgetting Ohio. You gotta get down to it. Soldiers are cutting us down. Should have been done long ago. What if you knew her and found her dead on the ground? How can you run when you know? When you know? Gotta get down to it. Soldiers are cutting us down. Should have been done long ago. What if you knew her and found her dead on the ground? How can you run when you know? When you know? And Nixon's coming. We're finally on our own. This summer I hear the drumming. Forgetting Ohio. Forgetting Ohio. Forgetting Ohio. Forgetting Ohio. Forgetting Ohio. Thank you very much.
That was so fun.
That was that was one of the coolest. That was one of the coolest things I think that we've just ever done. Just because, like, again, we've mentioned this story before, but we had we were about to leave that festival, that Woodstock festival, and one of the helpers comes in and says, "Hey, they're asking for you on stage," and we're like, "What?" We didn't even know what song they were playing, and they were like, "Hey, they're asking for you on stage. Come on stage," and we're like, "What? Us?"
Yeah, we were like we'd finished our set and we were like in the back break room or whatever, just kind of chilling out. Yeah. And then we were like really tired and we were like, let's go.
Mm-hmm. We were just about to leave.
Yeah, which is not cool. We hadn't even considered leaving.
I mean, we just out of being tired because, like, there were, we wanted to kind of stay in here them, and I was talking with Michael's wife, and she was like talking about all this cool linguistic stuff, and I'm like, oh man, I guess we gotta go because we're getting tired. And then Kai comes in and like, hey, they're asking for you on stage.
We were like, what? We were like, what? Looking behind your shoulder, like, me?
Yeah.
and we even went out there, like Ed and I, like, you could see our insecurities just like beaming because we're like, wait, did we go up there? Like, did they really want it? Like, and we looked at, we're like, you sure they called Kai? They called for us. They want us to come out. He's like, yes, they want you on stage. We're like, well, okay. We got it. And I looked at him like, should we go? And it's like, yeah, let's just go, I guess.
We got to. Like, they're asking on stage, like, we got to go. And so when we get up close, then they're like waving us on, like, come on.
And we're like, oh, and again, we're like, ooh, looking over our shoulder. Me? Still?
Yeah. But we heard what they were playing and we're like, oh.
We're like, oh, okay, that makes sense now.
Okay, they want us. Because we had played this song during our set earlier in the day. And they're like, let's have them come back on. And so we went up there and played with them, and man, that was fun.
It was super fun.
And they were the nicest guys. Like, we talked to them for a while after the show ended.
Yeah, they really were. And they were also, we were remarking when Ed was playing the video about how tall they are.
Tallest people.
And they had to be like 6'5"?
Yeah, easily
more?
6'5",
maybe
6'6".
Yeah, it could have been. Yeah, maybe 6'5", 6'6". They're from the Netherlands, and they're except for the guitar player who was probably like 5'9".
He was way shorter than both of us.
No, he had to be like 5'6".
Yeah,
so he was like a foot shorter than the rest of the guys in the band, and they were all the nicest people.
Yeah.
On the planet. And I actually have kept in touch with them a little bit. We've messaged back and forth about like maybe when they come here doing some tours together, but obviously nobody's talking about touring anymore. So.
Right. But that was just a really fun memory. And I remember also remarking after that night, just out of hand, I was like, oh, okay. So all the rock bands and all the rock music went to the Netherlands. Like, because I was thinking, like, where did the rock music go in America? Like, they were like a rock band.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, okay, it went to the Netherlands. Because, like, who do we have here? We have Foo Fighters. That's it. Like,
I know, it's true. When you listen
I'm
to those.
being facetious, but yeah.
Well, sort of. I remember we were watching like Billboard, like show of or the award show.
That's right.
And they had a rock band. And one of the rock bands listed was like Imagine Dragons. And we're like, what?
They're a rock band?
But I guess they are anymore.
That's
like,
right. You're right. I remember
who else was on it? Yeah, rock is so different now. What you consider rock is so different. Yeah, they're
in America especially.
Yep. But, check these guys out, Vanderland. They have kinds of recordings, and they're on all the streamy stuff, and they've got lots of videos out there, and
they're cool.
They're super cool. I think they were like being signed to Sony Germany at the time or something. I don't know if it actually worked or not, but they were like,
yeah, they had kind of a big thing there. Yeah. So yeah, that was a wonderful memory from our 2019 Europe tour.
Yeah.
And I found an equally wonderful memory in my opinion from our show and tell. And I just get a kick out of telling this story because I think it's really funny.
Yeah, it's funny.
Our great American educational system at work. I believe this was back in 2016, and we we had started to kind of venture out more throughout the upper Midwest. And we had got to play this cool little wine bar in Rapid City, South Dakota. Neither of us had ever, I don't think, you'd never been to South Dakota before, right? Before then?
I'd been to North Dakota, funny enough, but I'd never been
right?
I'd never been to South Dakota, which is the opposite of most Americans. So.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, isn't it fun? Isn't it like the presidential thing? That's the last state they visit, I think, is North Dakota.
I think it's the only state Brad hasn't been to.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, there's a lot of people say that. It's because, there's not really a reason to go.
Yeah, there's not too much there to be fair, but
there is in South Dakota.
Yeah, and we got to play a little wine bar there, and we had a couple of days. It was like a 2 or 3 day trek. I can't remember where we were heading to. I can't remember where we were heading to after that, but we had kind of a day in between, and we had gotten a hotel in Rapid City, and so we knew we had this day off, and so we're like, well, what should we do? What's around here? We're in South Dakota. There can't be that much around here, right? And so as we're driving back to the hotel, we spot a billboard that says Mount Rushmore, 15 minutes in that direction. And I'm like, oh,
where we're going.
That's where Mount Rushmore is. And so the next day we go to Mount Rushmore.
Because we were like 5 minutes from it.
Yeah.
We like literally stumbled upon Mount Rushmore with having zero clue that that's where we were headed.
Because Mount Rushmore is in America. But honestly, that's about as much as you are told, I feel like.
Yeah.
Or at least it's probably a footnote in the history books. And I knew Mount Rushmore was in America. I honestly had zero clue where in America it was.
I didn't know either.
I don't think anybody does. Until you accidentally play a show 15 minutes away from where it is. And
as you do.
Yeah. I guess I would imagine maybe if you go to Sturgis a lot, you probably are familiar.
That's true.
With Mount Rushmore and where it is. If you just travel a lot, but if you're just regular old Joe American, like honestly, you probably don't know exactly where it is. And so we went there, and it was fantastic.
Yeah,
Again,
why wouldn't we? We're like, we gotta go.
Yeah, we've got to go to Mount Rushmore. And so this is a photo of us in front of Mount Rushmore. Another kind of random tourist took this for us, and we are wearing our knit hats from Paul in
Montana.
Helena.
Helena, Montana.
Yeah, I can't remember his last name, but instead of money at our gig, he instead of tipping us money, he tipped us a bunch of hats that he crocheted.
He gave us like 30 hats.
Yeah, it was really nice, actually.
It was impressive.
But yeah, and I tell you, I haven't felt more American than going to Mount Rushmore, because if you haven't ever been, they have this kind of walkway up to the viewing dais where they have all 50 American flags, all 50 state flags, and like the kind of little blurb about each one. So you get to see every flag from every state in the Union, and then you walk up to it, and there it is. And it honestly looks a little smaller in person than you might think, because it's kind of far, where you view it, it's kind of far away.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then they have a little kind of museum area where they explain how they made it and everything, and yeah, it was cool. Like we tripped over Mount Rushmore on our travels.
It was really fun. There was also that was a fun part of the tour, because we also went to Wall Drug, which is also in South Dakota.
It's another thing I had heard of. I had heard references to it in my favorite TV show, Mystery Science Theater 3000. And I had seen signs. People had signs all over it, say like Wall Drug, 7,000 miles or whatever. And I'm like, what is that? It's not Walmart. I know what Walmart is.
Yeah.
What's Wall Drug? It's a general store in Wall, South Dakota.
Home of the 5-cent coffee.
Yeah, as we were driving away from Mount Rushmore, I saw this. We started seeing billboards for like Wall Drug, 5-cent coffee, and Wall Drug, whatever. Wall Drug, newlyweds get a free donut or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And it was like,
This place is huge, by the way.
was
Like when
massive.
you hear general store, think like it's more of like a general store amusement park without rides. Wait, are there rides? There might be.
have been. I can't remember. It was so big.
There might be like some smaller rides for kids and stuff, but I mean it was massive.
Yeah, it was huge. And yeah, in Wall, South Dakota, I didn't know that was the Wall part of Wall Drug. And we got there and
We had cherry pie.
yeah, we each got cherry pie, and they had coffee out there. You just throw a nickel in the cup and you get a thing of coffee, and you get a mug of coffee.
I remember you actually had a cup of coffee, which you
Yeah.
never do. And I was like,
never.
you're drinking coffee? And you're like, it's 5-cent coffee.
I never drink coffee, and come on, it's a nickel. What are you gonna like? We never get to live in that time in the time where something costs a nickel.
It's true.
Like every now and again, White Castle will do that thing where they'll have like a day where their hamburgers cost like 5 cents, but that's it. We don't get to live in that time anymore. So I'm gonna drink a 5-cent cup of coffee.
So there's a lot to do in South Dakota. Yeah,
Apparently.
you guys should totally go to South Dakota if you haven't been. And if you have been and you forgot where Mount Rushmore was, then you should go again.
Just go to Rapid City, South Dakota, turn right, and there's Mount Rushmore.
It's so pretty too. It's such a pretty area.
Yeah, I mean, that's around where the Badlands are, too. I think we drove through them or near them, but we didn't go visit them.
No,
I
we
think there's a
didn't.
national park there, but
We'll have to go back someday, I guess.
yeah. But I just loved, I really also just really liked this photo
Me too.
of us in front of Mount. It's such a super touristy photo,
Yeah.
but I think it's a really good photo.
Yeah, we don't often get to do the touristy stuff, but
Yeah,
we do.
that's true.
We do it. So it's you guys should check it out sometime. Get a touristy photo and share it with us. We'd love to see it.
Yeah. Let us know when you go to Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, that was my show and tell. I was really happy to find that.
Very nice show and tell there.
And I guess we'll leave you guys with a song. Nice choice.
Well, I figured it was appropriate. Even though I accidentally played it earlier, we'll play it again.
Oh yeah. Why not?
Why not? So, this is actually the very first song I remember learning on guitar. Doesn't mean there wasn't another one before it. I just don't remember it. I don't remember it if there was. But we're going to do Building Mystery from Sarah McLachlan. And I learned this when I was just a little pup. Got my first Siegel guitar. And I took out my Sarah McLachlan book. And I learned how to play a B minor in what a lot of other guitar players might call the cheater B minor style, which I disagree with completely. But so basically, you bar a B minor, right?
Wait, the cheater B minor? What's that?
Yeah, well, like this is your regular B minor, right? Your barred B minor.
Oh, okay.
I play my B minor like this. I know if you're listening, you can't see my hands, but it's basically the same thing, just without the top two notes.
without the root. You're playing the same shape. You're just not playing the root that you would with the bar.
Yeah, and that's how Sarah plays it.
Oh.
And this
that's not
song-
a cheater.
I know. But people will say, you cheat your way. No, it's
No.
not. Especially because B minor is such an awkward chord because you have to go to B minor so much because it's a very common chord, but
Yeah.
it's like the only one that most people only bar. So when you're playing when everything else you're playing is is like a G or a C and none of it's barred, and then you have to go to the barred B minor, it's kind of annoying because it's hard to get there, and it's a different hand movement. Like you have to move your entire wrist. So it takes a while, but I got the Sarah McLachlan book and it wrote out how to play the B minor. I'm like, well, that must be what she does, and that's what I'm gonna do. And that's the B
Sweet.
minor I play today. Unless I'm playing a song that's barred, then I'll bar the B minor, but that usually doesn't happen. So
Yeah.
can you hear my guitar there, Ed?
A little bit. Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah. That
Okay.
sounds good.
Cool. So yeah, I learned how to play it, and I learned guitar by going back and forth between B minor and G, B minor and G, B minor and G, and I swear that was the best thing I could have done to learn how to play guitar, because they're kind of hard. If you're a beginner guitar player, they're difficult chords to go back and forth between.
Yeah.
And then I learned how to play Building a Mystery, and I play it all the time. I played it all the time. I've been playing it all the time, and I still play it now. It's just one of those songs that just doesn't get old for me.
Awesome.
So since we had a whole episode on Lilith Fair, which is centered around Sarah McLachlan, I figured we should probably end with this song too. Even though we don't really do the song that much in Witherword.
No. Maybe we've done it one time, but I'm not sure.
Okay, well, it's B minor, G, and D and A. And then sometimes it goes to the E minor. Got it?
Yep.
2, 3, 4. You come out at night, that's when the energy comes and the dark side's light, and the vampires roll. You stretch your ass to wear and your suicide pole, and a cross from a faith that died before Jesus came. You're building a mystery. You live in a church where you sleep with voodoo dolls, and you won't give up the search for the ghost in the halls. You wear sandals in the snow and a smile I won't wash away. Can you look out the window without your shadow getting in the way? You're so beautiful, with an edge and a charm, and you're so careful when I'm in your arms, 'cause you're working, building a mystery, holding on and holding it in. Yeah, you're working, building a mystery, and choosing so carefully. You woke up screaming loud, a prayer from your secret God to feed off of fears. Hold back your tears, oh, you give us a tantrum and a know-it-all grin. Just when you need one, then the evening stayed. You look beautiful, you're a beautiful man. You set it up, your razor wire sharp, 'cause you're working, building a mystery.
Nice.
Nice, Ed. I love how I never can tell if you're going to play bass or guitar until I hear it.
Hear it.
Oh, bass was a good choice. Well, thank you guys. If you like our podcast, don't forget to leave us a review and subscribe to all of our channels. It really helps us out. So we thank you in advance for that. In fact, we're going to do a little contest here soon about how to leave us a review and win some cool stuff.
Yeah. Excellent job, Ashley, today. That was a wonderful book report.
Thank you.
I don't even want to call it a book report because it was so good.
I know, but I know we should probably start calling the book report episodes something different than episodes that we have a guest on.
I just call it
different
story times, but that's we could probably come up with something else.
Story times works too. It feels. I know it doesn't feel like a book report when I'm saying it, but it feels like a book report when I'm doing the research on it, and then there's a deadline. And I'm like, oh my god, it's due tomorrow.
I know what you mean. But yeah, wonderful job today. Thanks to our sponsor, EV, for helping us upgrade our podcast game. We really appreciate it.
Yes.
Thanks again to all of our patrons and our producers, Alice Williams.
Yes.
We really appreciate that.
Don't forget to join us next week. We've got Adam Smith next week, right?
Adam Smith next week. That's going to be a really cool show. He's a wonderful human being.
Yeah, and has a really, really cool story too. So you should tune in.
Definitely tune in. And we're going to get a schedule going pretty soon so you can kind of see what's coming up because we've got stuff planned already. So
we're going to start a calendar so you guys can start going to our website to see to kind of plan out your Sundays or whatever to see who we've got coming on. So we'll get that together for you real soon.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out.
Thank you.
And
I got an A+. Aw, thank you.
You get an A+. You passed.
Aw.
You passed the semester.
Finally.
Thanks again, everybody, and we will see you next time. Bye.